Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Tuesday, December 12th meeting of the Pierce County Council. The time is 3:02 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Campbell.
Here.
Councilmember Kruger. Here. Councilmember Denson. Here. Councilmember Herrera.
Here.
Councilmember Hitchen.
Here.
Councilmember Morell.
Here.
Councilmember Mello.
Here.
You have 7 members present.
We have all 7 members present and a quorum, and this is the last meeting we have planned for the year. Item number 3 is our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and land acknowledgement. Please join us in listening to the land acknowledgement and Pledge of Allegiance to the flag led by Vice Chair Campbell, followed by a moment of silence dedicated to our men and women who serve overseas in our military. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish tribes. Coast Salish people have lived on and stewarded these lands since time immemorial and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step towards true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land. I'd like to invite us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag in the back corner, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are now at section 4, which is the approval of our agenda. Are there any objections to approving today's agenda as presented? Seeing no objection, the agenda is approved. On today's council agenda, there will be multiple opportunities for public comment. On the consent agenda, you may provide comment on any final action item. This does not include items placed on the consent agenda simply for introduction and scheduling. On today's consent agenda, there are 2 appointment resolutions and 1 grant approval and a lease extension. Those are eligible for public comment. During sections 8 and 9 of the agenda, we will take public comment on each ordinance and resolution individually. And finally, under community forum, there will be an opportunity to address the council on any topic that is not on today's agenda. We ask you to remember our rules of procedure and public engagement, which ensure that you address all comments to the chair and be mindful of the decorum expected during this meeting. For more information on our rules for public participation, please review the bottom of page 1 of today's agenda. So that brings us to section 5. We now have the consent agenda before us. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a couple of appointees, and I don't see any online. Checking to see if perhaps in the room, Mr. Neville or Patton.
I'm moving Neville.
Okay. Then I will go ahead and hold his off. Leave the other one on there. So I would move that we amend the consent agenda, move an item number 2A to section 11, and item number, I'm sorry, that's item B2A. Right? Nope, just 2A.
It's resolution 2023-166.
Right, 2A. And then also moving item C to A to section 9, I believe it is, and to adopt the consent agenda as amended.
Second, if you got that.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the exception of moving resolution 2023-166 to resolutions of our regular meeting
168.
and Resolution 2023-168 to other business under our meeting. Is that accurate, Vice Chair Campbell?
Yes, sorry.
Everyone understand the motion in front of us? This is a public hearing on the rest of the final action items that remain on the consent agenda. Does any member of the public wish to provide public comment on final action items on the consent agenda? We'll start here in chambers. We'll invite you to the podium if you wish to provide comment on final action items on our consent agenda. I don't see anybody in chambers. Mr. Weinsberry, anybody in the Zoom room?
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on the final action, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or star 9 on your telephone keypad. No hands at this time, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the consent agenda as amended?
Councilmember Kruger.
Aye.
Councilmember Jensen. Aye. Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morel.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The results of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the consent agenda as amended is adopted. That brings us to Section 6, messages from the executive, judges, or the prosecuting attorney. There is one message from the executive transmitting the following ordinance, which was approved and signed on December the 11th, 2023, and that was ordinance number 2023-69S, which was an ordinance of the Pierce County Council establishing a small business strengthening and security grant program. We're now at Section 7, proclamations, recognitions, and awards. Our first proclamation today proclaims December 21st, 2023 as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day here in Pierce County, Washington. I'd like to invite up several individuals to the podium, including John Barbie, our Community Services Program Manager, Devin Isaacson, a Social Service Supervisor, new to the team, not new to Pierce County, but new to the staff team. And I'd also like to invite up Chaplain Ed Jacobs from the Tacoma Fire Department as we read this proclamation into the record. Thank you to all three of you for making time to be with us today.
Thank you, Batman.
This is a proclamation of the Pierce County Council proclaiming December 21, 2023 as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day here in Pierce County, Washington. Whereas the longest night of the year, December 21, 2023, marks the first day of winter and is observed as a day of remembrance for those who passed because of homelessness. And whereas in the season of generosity and sharing, the Pierce County community is encouraged to commit themselves to promoting compassion and concern for all, particularly during the winter months that pose extreme hardships for residents who are less fortunate and without homes. And whereas Pierce County has 6,500 people connected to our homeless crisis response system, including veterans, women, children, domestic violence survivors, and seniors. And whereas in 2021, the Pierce County Council prioritized ending homelessness through Resolution 2021-30S, which created the Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness Ad Hoc Committee to facilitate planning to identify both short-term and long-term solutions to end homelessness. And whereas the Pierce County Council continues to prioritize efforts to help resolve and end homelessness, as reflected in our biennial budget, where $217 million was appropriated to help those experiencing homelessness, including eviction prevention, and to develop and improve access to affordable housing, shelter, and homeless services within Pierce County. And whereas even with funding support, hunger and homelessness continue to be a crisis for so many for Pierce County residents who have the right to adequate food, housing, clothing, safety, and health care. And whereas a homeless memorial gathering will take place on December 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. at Shiloh Baptist Church right here in Tacoma, Washington, to remember those who died in 2023. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this 12th day of December 2023 by the Pierce County Council that Pierce County joins the National Coalition for the Homeless and the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council in designating December 21, 2023 as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. Let's give them a round of applause. It's a really sobering moment to reflect on, but it's an important day, and thank you for your organization to provide a moment for our community to properly reflect. And Mr. Barbie, could we ask you to start with some remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, council members. John Barbie, I am Pierce County Human Services Community Services Manager. So very humbling and honored to be here to accept this proclamation and to, along with my colleagues, I also want to say that there's quite a few people watching online that are in the provider communities, and that's who makes this system go. On this day, on December 21st, we are going to take that moment and really honor those who have unfavorable housing and just lack basic needs, and recognize them for their loss and remembrance. So we appreciate and thank you for the recognition of the proclamation. I'd also like to just take a moment to invite our new homeless supervisor of community engagement to talk about another important date that happens in January, which is our point in time count. If she could just, if I could have just maybe 1 minute, that's
That'd be
okay.
awesome.
All right, thank you.
Devin, we're excited to have you on the Pierce County team.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here. Very excited. And it's great to see some of your faces again. This segues well into the PIT count, the point in time count. This happens annually. It is required by HUD and the Department of Commerce. It's a one-night snapshot of the folks in our community who are experiencing homelessness, not to be confused with the total count. It just gives us some insight to trends, does things like build public awareness around people that are experiencing homelessness, and gives us data. It's very important this year that we have volunteers who are willing to go out, talk with our neighbors, learn about their situations, learn about the barriers that they face to actually establishing safe and stable housing in our communities. And I would encourage everyone in the room who is interested to please volunteer your time. Point in time count happens January 25th. That would be a daytime count, an overnight count from 9 p.m. until 2 a.m., and then there will be continued counting that Friday, which is the 26th. There are opportunities to donate. We're doing a jacket and blanket drive. You can drop your donations off at the Soundview building. And yeah, we counted 2,148 folks last year. Pretty staggering number. Of course, 6,500 in our homeless system, so we know there's a lot more than the folks we actually talked to that night. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to be a part of that point in time count this year.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you for that invitation. Chaplain, we would love to hear from you as well.
Okay. Excuse me. It's at 5 o'clock rather than 6 o'clock.
Thank you for making sure we got that right.
Yeah. Currently, and for the final count, we have 295 people that died on the street homeless in the last year in Pierce County. That's almost 80% more than the people that died last year. The American Medical Association nationally has said that when there are sweeps and people are forced to move, that the morbidity rate goes up 151% because of the lack of friends and people around. So when you're overdosing and no one notices, you die. If you have friends, they might notice and call somebody, and you might survive. So we have a challenge ahead of us, is how to change that. But we thank you for your proclamation, and we hope to see you there on
At
the
5
21st.
o'clock.
At 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock at Shiloh
Yes.
Baptist on December 21st. We'll help get the word out accordingly and accurately. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm going to open it up to my colleagues. We're going to invite you up here for a photo here soon so we can use it to help get the word out about about the day and the memorial, the opportunity we have to reflect. Let me begin with Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. What was the number that you quoted on how many to,
How many died?
yes,
295
to date?
to date.
So we're averaging more than one a day. Very sobering news. This last year, as a council, started a select committee on homelessness based on the number that there were 168 who died the year before, and that was unacceptable. And I'm sad to see that the number's almost doubling.
Yes.
That is not the direction I think any of us want to be going. When we talk about being homeless is dangerous for many reasons. You talk about someone there not to help in case of overdose or any other medical emergency. We know that one of the leading things that lead to suicide is loneliness. And again, living in a solitary tent in the middle of nowhere can very much lead to that loneliness and despair and despondency. And also the violence that many just suffer at the hands of other people within the area that seek to exploit a vulnerable population or blame them for something that may have happened. I know just up the road, it might have been the year before, we had some people killed because someone's car got broke into and they were the nearest tents, and therefore the 60-some-year-old woman living there must have been responsible. We know that that's not true, but she suffered from it. So thank you very much for marking this and bringing this to the forefront. It's a sobering conversation, but one that we have to have. And I think it's good to have with numbers, facts, and stories, and that we continue to honor this at this time of the year, those who won't be celebrating the holiday season. But to also continue to have this conversation throughout the year. So and thank you for bringing up the point in time count. Our Select Committee on Homelessness, our January meeting will actually, that's the at least scheduled topic for that before it, so that we can help raise awareness to it. And then later, we'll bring it back to that committee for the findings and the trends and the unfortunate update to this number that at this time looks to, which is far beyond acceptable. Thank you for all that you do.
If you can stand one more statistic.
Could you come to the podium, Jeff?
I can.
So that people can hear you.
When a person becomes homeless, the average that they will die is 25 years earlier than they would if they were not homeless.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes. The average age in Pierce County of someone dying is 79. Our average of the 295 people that died is 53. So these folks lose a good 25 years of their lives.
My birthday is December 22nd, the day after the 21st, and I will be turning 53 on that day. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Campbell, for your comments, and thank you all for all the work that you do, and to everyone who's listening that's a provider. Everyone's working so hard, and having the numbers go up with mortalities is frustrating and sad, but I know people are in this business doing this work because they're committed to making a difference. When I think of someone who is unhoused that is deceased, in my mind, immediately I'm thinking of an older person, or I'm thinking of somebody who looks far older than their years because of the trauma and living on the streets and whatever situation caused them to become homeless. Things obviously were not going well for them. But I think we need to remember that even though you mentioned that the average age is 53, I visited Spanaway United Methodist Church just yesterday morning to visit their safe parking and their family promise program that they're getting up for families. And Pastor Jenkins shared that they just recently had a 6-week-old baby die in a car. And so I think we need to remember that it's not just older people that have lived lives or have lived part of their lives and, things have happened to them, maybe some choices have been made. It's also, it's children that are impacted by homelessness that have absolutely no choice in the matter and certainly don't deserve to be in that situation and that need our help. So I will definitely be participating again this year in the point in time count, and we'll encourage other people to do so as well. And obviously, this council has shown a huge commitment to addressing homelessness, and we, are prepared to do whatever the experts say is going to work, because we need to double down on our efforts here and to save lives, of our neighbors, our brothers and sisters in Pierce County. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair, for bringing this proclamation up. It's really important. One of the biggest fears for anybody is to be forgotten. And quite often our homeless are always forgotten in a lot of aspects. But this brings it to the forefront of remembering who they were. This touches my heart because working as a law enforcement officer in this community for over 20 years in the same neighborhood, I've seen folks who are homeless, and I've seen their victories. I've seen their downsize. I've seen them have good things in their lives and things like that, get older on the streets. I've seen how dangerous it can be on the streets, not just for what's going on the streets, but when you start getting older and you have any type of medical anything, it's compounded because someone's not seeing you having a diabetic issue over here, and that can kill you. And just having the conversations with homeless people in the middle of the night on Christmas, because I work those nights, and just knowing the human side of it, whatever the situation they may be in, they feel cold, they feel hunger, they feel loneliness, they feel all the things that we feel. A lot of their dreams have been shot down out of the sky and things like that, but they definitely are human. And this kind of brings it to the forefront. And I just wanted to say a few names of people I interacted with that probably no one has said their name in a long time. And that's Mama Bear, Eli, Jimmy, Champ, and many others that have been unnamed here in this Pierce County, in the Tacoma area here, that did walk and breathe the same air that we breathed. So it's a somber thing, but it gives us energy to move forward to help the people who are human. And it gives us the strength and ideas to move forward. So I stand with my heads on my shoulders, looking forward to what we can do for the people who are still here, who have not crossed to the other side yet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Herrera. These are real people with real names, families, real lives. They're not faceless folks. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for saying many of the things that I was hoping to hear. And I just want to thank Mr. Jacobs. The ceremony that your organization, your church, your fellowship brings to make sure that we understand that these are human beings that are no longer part of our community is really powerful. I've had the opportunity to attend both virtually and in person. And the ringing of the bells, the different religions that you bring into this, because we don't know their religion, so they make a point of bringing different religions part of their ceremony, and then reading the names. It's going to take a little bit more time, unfortunately, this year to read the names, but it's important that we make sure that we've lost a human in Pierce County. We've lost a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a niece. We've lost a daughter. Somebody is no longer part of our community, and we say their name, and we ring bells, and we mourn, and then all the providers out there try and figure out how are we going to not have this list get longer and longer. So to those that are doing that work, thank you, and we're just going to keep on it. But we'll pause on the 21st and say their names and make sure we treat them as human beings and say their farewells. So thank you for putting that on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues working together to bring this forward and support this opportunity to help remember on December 21st. Thank you to Chaplain for your leadership and the other leaders in our community who make time and space for the important moment. But also thank you for your call to action to make sure we do everything in our power to bring those numbers down. We want to bring the numbers to zero. And our professional staff who works really hard to support the system of providers, works incredibly hard on our behalf. And I'm so grateful that this council set up a select committee on homelessness to focus like a laser on this. That work is led by Vice Chair Campbell and Councilmember Herrera and Denson serve on that select committee. But I know all of us are very much committed to the work, whether we serve on that committee or not. So we look forward to doing what we can, making the right investments, putting the right policies in place. And thank you, Devin, for the invitation to the point-in-time count. Many of us have participated, and many of us will participate again. It is very eye-opening and very informative to be out on the streets and talking to folks. It's an interview. So if you haven't done it yet, if you're listening at home and accept the invitation to participate in a volunteer, whether the day shift or the overnight shift, be ready for a very impactful experience. Not only do we show up with gloves and food and a coat and blanket, thanks to the generosity of many, but we actually engage with folks and have real conversation about why they found themselves homeless, what their last known zip code is. And it's amazing. Their last known zip code, at least the conversations I've had during the point-in-time count, was not Tacoma. It was Puyallup and Eatonville, Fife, or Federal Way. So you learn a lot about people's stories about why they find themselves homeless, and it's such important work. So thank you to all of you. We do encourage everyone to participate in the National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, 5:00 p.m., December 21st at Shiloh Baptist Church here on the hilltop of Tacoma. Can we invite the three of you to come up and take a photo with us? Our next proclamation proclaims the month of January 2024 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month here in Pierce County, Washington. I'd like to invite up a few very special guests to the podium as we read this proclamation to the record. They include Ann Kelly from Compassion, Washington, Carmelita Escarcega from the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, and Carolyn DeFord. We'd like to invite you to the podium as Councilmember Herrera reads this proclamation into the record. Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. Whereas National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month was established in January 2010, proclaiming the right and equality and freedom inherent to all people, advocating for legislation that protects survivors and punishes offenders, educating leaders, and encouraging public awareness and action against various forms of human trafficking. And whereas human trafficking is a form of slavery that can affect anyone, particularly victimizing vulnerable populations, and occurs when someone uses force, fraud, coercion to cause another person to engage in forced labor, involuntary servitude, debt bondage, or commercial sex act. And whereas Indigenous people make up 17% of the missing people in Washington state, but are only 1.6% of the population. But in 2021, the state of Washington initiated a missing and murdered women's and people's task force. And whereas since 2008, law enforcement officers in Pierce County have participated in the FBI South Sound Child Exploitation Task Force, leading to arrests of human traffickers and solicitors of trafficked persons, and rescuing trafficking victims and providing them to resources and services. And whereas the Pierce County Human Trafficking Task Force works with local community groups to provide a response to trafficking through coordination of services between nonprofits, education of community members, and collaboration between professionals at the government level. And whereas community members who suspect or have information to assist victims of human trafficking may call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. The Be Free text line at 233-733, or call 911 or contact your local law enforcement. And whereas fighting human trafficking is a shared responsibility and takes each of us doing our part by being educated about all forms, signs, and consequences of human trafficking, and working together to end this heinous crime against humanity. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this 12th day of December 2023 by the Pierce County Council that the month of January 2024 is Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month in Pierce County. And Pierce County joins a statewide hashtag Not Alone campaign, which includes messaging to help victims of human trafficking. The community is encouraged to recognize the vital role to play in ending all forms of human trafficking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause for their work. We'd love to hear remarks from our guests.
Well, I hate to add to the sobering statistics today, but I'm going to enlighten everybody about some of the statistics on our Washington websites. About 2,000 to 3,000 minors are trafficked in Washington for sex each year. About half of all of the human trafficking victims are children. Many of them have suffered other crimes such as sexual assault, sexual abuse, or domestic violence. Washington is one of the highest states in terms of human trafficking cases. People as young as 9 years old appear in more than 100 websites for soliciting sex in the Seattle area. These are just a few statistics. I won't add all of them. After we've heard all these about the homeless, it's pretty sobering, isn't it? I feel like shedding some tears right now. But there is hope, and I am so grateful for the work that you are all doing in creating this proclamation and allowing us to come and share. I'm from Compassion Washington. We are a local agency in Tacoma, and we work with survivors of human trafficking. We also provide education and awareness. We provide that through churches. We provide it through various outlets to get out to the public what is happening in this area. We also provide free healthcare clinics for our various communities. One we have in Tacoma every year so far. We've had one in Sumner for the last 3 years. And we also are providing that for survivors, but homeless people and people in our communities that are underprivileged. They can't afford health care, and so we are doing that through our ministry. We also provide restorative care for our survivors. We do a course called Mending the Soul, which is for trauma-based. It's a trauma-based approach to helping women and men to recover from what they've experienced. I personally work at a one-year recovery program with women who have been traumatized. Most of them are addicted to drugs, and I have discovered in that work that almost 100% of them are drug addicted because of sexual trauma. And so I think that also would qualify for many of the women that I have known who are homeless, because I used to work with the homeless. So that's just another enlightenment about what's happening in the homeless area, because I used to also work with them. So I'm so grateful for the work that Compassion Washington is doing to help women to heal. And I have seen them come from being like a little rosebud when we start working with them to blossoming by the time we're done with our 14-week program. And I'm so thankful to God, and I'm so thankful to Christine Gilgee, who's the director of Compassion Washington, for the tireless work that she does to help survivors. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being with us and for the work you do.
Hail, Carolyn DeFord Seedsta, Spjala Babschad to Altchad, Tacoma. Good day, my name is Carolyn DeFord. I am Puyallup. I currently reside and work in the Tacoma area. I am the Anti-Trafficking Program Manager for the Puyallup Tribe of Indians Community Domestic Violence Advocacy Program. I'm also a co-chair on the Washington State MMIWP Task Force and on the Washington Against Sexual Exploitation Committee. Thank you all, Chair and council members, for your good work and your dedication to ending these issues and addressing the issues that are putting our people at risk: homelessness, substance use, mental health issues, domestic violence, and human trafficking. All of these issues go hand in hand. We can't address one without addressing the other. We're just chasing our tail. But I do appreciate your good words and your commitment to address human trafficking, not just this year, but in the past, and the efforts that have been done to address missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. They're both inherently linked together. Last year, we had a Puyallup tribal member who had been missing for 2 years, and she was found. She had passed in a homeless encampment in Seattle due to a fire and was unidentified for over a year before we were able to identify her and bring her home and lay her to rest. And so coming up on January 10th will be the memorial of her coming home to her family. So the words that our partners spoke earlier also hit me close to home, working with that family and that grief and the loss. Human trafficking has been going on, and the sale of Indigenous women for exploitation and sexual purposes has been going on since the time of colonization. And our area here is not exempt to that. Olympia, Tacoma, and Seattle were all Native women were taken and lured from our villages and forced to work in brothels during the gold rush, and that ties back to that exploitation of our land and environment. But our historic districts and brothels all housed with Indigenous women historically, and that is still happening today. Much of our data includes the high rates of Native women being linked to prostitution or sex work. Dr. Sandy Pierce is a leading Native scholar and sex trafficking researcher, and she confirms that this is nothing new, but Native women have been viewed as impure, and settlers assumed the right to kidnap, rape, and prostitute Native women and girls without consequence. This is still evident in a study conducted in 4 cities in the United States and Canada that reported that 40% of Native women who were involved in sex trafficking identified as Native American, First Nation, or Alaska Natives. 40%. We need data here locally as well. We are a prime location. We have international port. We have major sports venues. Everything that brings folks into our area to purchase sex is dominant here.
Human trafficking intersects with the foster care system, domestic violence, and missing and murdered, and often the apathetic treatment of survivors contributes to the shame and silence that prevents them from speaking up and their barriers to healing. We have to continue to address the consequences of human trafficking and work to tackle the root of its causes, such as poverty, homelessness, gang affiliation, mental health, and substance use disorder. Our local governments, our county, our state, and our tribes, their commitment and cooperation is crucial in identifying and addressing human trafficking in our communities, but also in prosecuting and convicting perpetrators. The long-term recovery and wellness of our community depends on our ability and our willingness and commitment to work together. We are very grateful for the work that is being done, the work that continues to be pushed forward, and are hopeful to continue this partnership, raising awareness and helping to make our communities a safer place, because this is a generational issue. Many times, for instance, if a mother is trafficked, that may be that her mother or her auntie or her grandmother has been trafficked, and this has been normalized within family and community. So we've got a lot of work to do to be able to protect those future generations who may be additionally vulnerable and at risk. Thank you all for your time and your work today.
Thank you. Janine or Carmelita?
Just want to say thank you to all of you for bringing this attention to all of this and for allowing us to have a voice to be able to speak for those who cannot.
Thank you for making time to be with us and for the work that you do. Let me open it up to other members for final remarks. We'll begin with Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. This is an important topic that folks don't want to talk about in some aspects. But sorry, the mic wasn't on. But it's an important topic that a lot of people are uncomfortable to talk about. But today we're talking about it because it's happening here in our community. You may not see it like how we used to see it, people on the streets or anything like that. Technology has changed how this happens, and it's happening behind doors, but it's happening. And it's really hard to find them. A lot of times they're taken out of the state, they're taken to another city, and you don't know what's going on. When it comes to Native Americans, and you see, we talked about the stat, how there's a very large stat. You talked about some of the generational aspects to it. Intimately knowing what's kind of going on the street, being an undercover narcotics detective who I really looked into this type of stuff and know the evil that's out there from certain drug dealers who absolutely 100% target Native American women in our community for several reasons. One is they have a per capita. So they have a steady income of money. And even if they weren't addicted to drugs, they work very hard, they befriend them, and they get them locked down on those type of things. And they start very young, sometimes in high school. And I'm not just saying this because I read it in a book. It's something I investigated. It happened here in this community. It's happening here, and we need to really put the microscope of who these bad people are. And they walk among us, and they are targeting. It's calculated. It's organized. And this is really important. And this just devastates lives like you wouldn't believe. Even the aftermath, I'm sure you take a lot of work from getting that rosebud to open up. It's probably one of the toughest things out there when it comes to culturally and the stigma of going down that road and trying to come off that road. All through mankind's history has kind of been not so nice. But thank you for people who, like yourself, who are standing up and talking about it and being the voice of folks, and hopefully we can find people before we find them in Seattle and January 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for being here this afternoon, and I honestly wish we didn't have to have this proclamation read to acknowledge something that's so heinous. I've had the honor of working side by side with Carolyn on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and People Task Force, and the data we're looking at, the things we're talking about are traumatizing just to talk about from the outside. And so to live in a community that has been traumatized and re-traumatized and again, I can't fathom it. And I know Carolyn has brought forth and the other members of the different tribal communities that have shown up to really make sure that we are centering this work around the families and the historic harm that has been done to our Indigenous populations. And human trafficking and exploitation is at the core and heart of a lot of that, where we're not historically looking at Indigenous people as people. And that's the part that's so hard to think and wrap my head around. I just can't figure that out. But the work continues, and we keep going on that path. And I'm very pleased with the work we're doing. Just can't get it done fast enough. The other part of human trafficking that sometimes get lost in some of this stuff is through work exploitation and wage theft, and the idea that we have corporations, companies, and even small businesses that, and even farming companies that exploit people for work, whether residents of our country or they come from somewhere else, where they are brought here to do a job that nobody else wants to do or nobody wants to pay for. And that is truly something that still happens in the United States in companies, in corporations, and it's a very different topic. It doesn't get as much airtime as human trafficking in the sense of sex work and exploitation, but it is something that is also happening that I think we need to make sure. So the hashtag Not Alone really is about how do you reach out and talk about if you have been exploited. You're not alone. This is happening, and we want to help. So please reach out to any of the numbers and on there, or follow the movement under the Not Alone hashtag and see if you can find some resources in your community. If there's an advocacy group that can help you understand what's happened to you or connect you with resources, people want to help. We want to stop the cycle that Carolyn brought up and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I appreciate that we're acknowledging this this afternoon and for the month of January. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. I'm more aware of Compassion Washington and the things that they do, and the outreach is phenomenal, and the healing that I see going on makes what you all do so very special. When you try to look up numbers and statistics, I think depending on where you go, the numbers can be different, but I'm finding there's like 25 million people a year that are being trafficked. And in Washington State, I believe I was reading it in Executive Dan Meyer's blog from a year ago, that about 400, averaging give or take 100, are being trafficked daily in the Puget Sound area. In this $150 billion industry, I have a feeling it's more than that. I don't know if it exceeds the weapons business or not, but knowing that people can be reused over and over, and the stories for the children. And if you want to know evil, look for those stories, what can be done to 6-month-old newborns, 2-year-olds. It is pure evil. And we need more folks who are willing to go out and do what you do and have the ability to handle that. I remember the story Rescuing Lacey. And so when you have these girls that go into that lifestyle and they get rescued out, you know, how do you go from playing Barbies to being violated and then go back to playing Barbies? It's the lives that are ruined. And so I just want to commend you for all that you do. That you can make me feel better. I can sleep better at night knowing you're in charge, because I would fall apart. So thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any other final remarks. It's really hard to tell these stories and really acknowledge that these things happen right here in our own community. And as has been said before, we are immensely grateful for the work that you and your teams do to help build awareness, bring resources to folks who find themselves in this crisis, who are trafficked for their labor, for sex, for other things that bring severe harm to their lives. So it's the least we can do to raise awareness, but please continue to call on Pierce County as partners in all the ways that we can do to help bring some solutions to this real crisis. So thank you so much for being with us. We'd really love to have you come up here so we can take a photo with you. Nick Neville, are you still there?
I am.
You are. Is there objection by council to come back to Resolution 2023-166 to consideration of appointing Nicholas Neville to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee? I don't see any objection. Councilmember Krueger, for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move R 2023-166.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2023-166. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number R 2023-166, a resolution of the Pierce County Council confirming the appointment of one new member, Nicholas Neville, to the Pierce County Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Mr. Neville, apologies if I mispronounced your last name earlier. We would love for you to briefly introduce yourself and share briefly why you wish to serve. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Chair Mello and council members, I'm honored to be considered as a representative for the Lodging Tax and Advisory Committee. I've lived in Pierce County my whole life, or at least since I was 5 years old, and I am very excited about the direction that the county is going in when it comes to economic development and welcoming visitors to our area. I own and operate Mount Rainier National Park Cabins, which is a collection of 5 short-term rentals that my family built from the ground up. Very small family business, but we really enjoy welcoming visitors to our area and providing for our family. And I'm excited to represent the Mount Rainier and Pierce County area as we grow and welcome additional visitors to Pierce County. Thanks again for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to introduce yourself. We also have had your written application and appointment from the county executive, so thank you for that. And thank you for being here. Are there questions for Nicholas before we open this up for a public hearing? I don't see any. This is a public hearing on the appointment of Nicholas to the Pierce County Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. Are there any members of the public wishing to provide comment? Here in chambers, I don't see any. Mr. Weinsberry, anybody in the Zoom room?
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on proposal number R 2023-166, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And I see no hands at this time, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by council members? Councilmember Kruver.
Thank you, Chair Mello. And Nick, I think I met you before I got your application, and I was just really excited that you are the one that had filled that out. Because at the meetings I have been to, you've been very vocal and had so much to the conversation. Your experience was exciting, and it just makes it more fun to be on that committee. So thank you for choosing to be on that committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there other final remarks? Nick, thank you for what you and your family do to provide recreational opportunities in this most beautiful part of Pierce County, and showing us that there are many great economic opportunities throughout the county. So thank you, and thanks for your willingness to serve. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on Resolution 2023-166?
Councilmember Dunson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morel.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Kruver.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the resolution is adopted. Thank you again, Nick, and thank you for all the time you spent with us this afternoon to allow us to get to that item.
Thank you.
We were at ordinances. The first ordinance is Proposal 2023-71. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move proposal number 2023-71.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Proposal 2023-71. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number 2023-71, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council amending ordinance number 2021-100S2 as amended by ordinance numbers 2022-30,
Last line,
2022-
please.
previously appropriated items.
Thank you. Mr. Boki, good evening.
Thank you, Chair Mello, Paul Boki, Council Staff. This is a supplemental budget. This will be the seventh time the 2022-23 biennial budget has been amended. The general fund has one change in it. The corrections budget is increased by $500,000 to cover additional overtime costs. Other funds increased include the limited general obligation bond redemption fund plus $50.3 million to provide budget authority for the receipt and transfer of bond revenue associated with the recent bond issue. Accounting standards require that the bond revenue be recognized in the bond fund before being transferred to the receiving capital fund. You handled that capital fund increase in a prior supplemental budget. Emergency Communications Sales Tax Fund, which is South Sound 911 Fund, to align with the fund with the increased sales tax receipts. The Ferry Services Fund up $750,000 for increased dry dock expenses and higher expenses associated with the new ferry operating contract. Equipment Rental and Revolving Fund, which is a internal service fund. It's located in the Planning and Public Works Department, plus $2,972,190 for increased fuel and supply costs. Detention Center Commissary Fund up $331,960 due to increased vendor prices and a higher volume of inmate purchases. The Pierce County Fair Fund plus $237,120 to cover increased expenses, which will be covered by increased revenue. The Tourism Promotion Area Fund plus $230,000 to support allocations approved in 2023. Federal Forest Services Fund plus $44,460 to purchase a new all-terrain vehicle for search and rescue efforts, and the South Sound 911 Building Lease Fund plus $4,000 to cover final closing costs. I would note this was given a due pass recommendation at the November 27th, 2024 Rules and Operations Committee meeting, and there is one amendment.
Thank you. Are there questions for, excuse me, let me first turn to the department to see what Director Robinson has to add. Good evening, Director Robinson.
Council members, Gary Robinson, the Director of the Finance Department. As implied by the list that Mr. Boki had gone through with you, the final supplemental budget for our calendar year and for the biennium is designed to make any revisions based upon final assumptions associated with expenditure authority or adjustments in the budget. So both the items that Mr. Bulkey has gone through with you and the amendment that he will be covering is in that category, final adjustments to the budget so that we have expenditure authority matching up to the experience that we have had throughout the last 24 months. And we're pleased to be with you on your final day for a final budget action at the end of this year, too.
Thank you, Director Robinson. Are there questions for our Finance Director or Mr. Bulkey before we consider Amendment 1? I don't see any. Thank you, Director Robinson. Vice Chair Campbell, to move Amendment 1, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I move Council Amendment number 1 to proposal number 2023-71.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Council Amendment number 1. Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Chair Mello, Paul Bulkey, Council staff. This amendment came from the Finance Department, and it makes a number of technical adjustments. The first one is to the 911 System Fund. That is a special revenue fund. It's to increase the amount by $200,000 to account for some additional revenue and give it the authority to transfer the funds. And then on page 17 of the proposal, and that's at the end of the special revenue funds, there'll be 3 funds added: Anti-Profiteering Revolving Fund, the Endangered Species Act Fund, and the Administration Building Lease Fund. And there are amounts given there. Those 3 items are 3 of a number of funds that are being closed as of January 1st, 2024. They will be shut down. You won't see them anymore. And this was done by prior council action. This was Ordinance 2023-29, which you approved, I believe, back in August of this year, which did a number of things. But what's applicable here is that there were a number of funds that were closed. They're no longer needed. And the authorization is needed to transfer the remaining funds so that the accounts can be closed. So you're taking you're adding these funds to the budget. You're putting a number in, and then that gives each of those funds spending authority, and then that allows at year end, when the books are closing, for the Finance Department to transfer those funds. So your next question will be, where will those funds be transferred? That's a logical question, and I think that's why the Finance Department is here to explain that to you today.
Director Robinson.
Gary Robinson with the Finance Department. The ordinance that Council approved earlier in the year closed a series of funds for which we have not had any transaction activity. In that ordinance, it specifies that any remaining balances in those accounts are to be transferred based upon council authority, council decision. These are the final funds that we've identified that have any balances remaining from the list that you approved previously, and we're proposing that these funds be transferred to the general fund, which then can be made available for expenditure in a subsequent budget cycle or become part of fund balance. Each of these accounts, when they were established, and some of these go back decades, were set up for a specific programmatic purpose, and the funds had not been expended based on prior appropriations of councils many, many years in the past.
Thank you. Are there questions for Director Robinson? I don't see any. Thank you. Any final remarks or questions on Council Amendment number 1? Not seeing any. We'll take a voice vote on the adoption of Council Amendment number 1. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is adopted. We now have the supplemental budget as amended before us. I don't see any other hands, so we'll open this up for a public hearing on the supplemental budget as amended. We'll start here in chambers. Anyone in chambers wishing to provide comment on this proposal? Not seeing any. Mr. Weinsberry, anybody in our Zoom room?
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on proposal number 2023-71, press the raise hand icon on Zoom or star 9 on your telephone keypad. There are no hands at this time, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by council members? Well, thank you, Mr. Bulkey and finance staff. Good to clean up the finance books before the end of the year so we can enter the new year with our new budget. So glad to do this. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on 2023-71?
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the ordinance is adopted. We have proposal number 2023-72 before us. Councilmember Hitchin for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move 2023-72.
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance number 2023-72. Madam Clerk, please read the title into the record.
Proposal number 2023-72, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council levying an assessment in 2023 for collection in 2024 against Pierce County for the control of noxious weeds, and acknowledging receipt of the Pierce County Noxious Weed Control Board's 2024 annual budget.
Thank you. Mr. Boki to brief the council.
Thank you, Chair Mello, Paul Boki, council staff. You are being revised to Code of Washington RCW 17.10240 authorizes counties to levy an assessment against the land for noxious weed control purposes. This proposal will set the property assessment in 2024 for the control of noxious weeds. The 2024 assessment rate for non-exempt parcels is proposed to be $1.79 per parcel plus 16 cents an acre. This is the same assessment as in 2023. The last time the rate was changed, it was in 2020. The list of properties exempt from the assessment is listed on page 2, section 3 of the proposal. Noxious weed control is a county-wide function, therefore properties in both the incorporated and unincorporated areas are assessed. The RCW states further that the activated county noxious weed control board of each county shall annually submit a budget to the county legislative authority for operating cost of the county's weed program for the ensuing year. And this has been provided in Exhibit A of this ordinance. The budget for 2024 is $640,000. I would note that this was given a due pass recommendation at the December 4th, 2023 Rules and Operations Committee meeting. A number of questions came up at that meeting, and we received a email from the Administrative Program Manager, Ms. Donna Peoples. And I'll just go through those questions really quickly. Is there a maximum rate that the district can charge under state law? And the answer is no. Does the district have performance parameters? And the answer is we do not have performance parameters. However, we do gather measurable statistics from year to year to determine where our education and control efforts will be best used. Does the district work with the state on making sure that its right-of-ways and other properties are cleared of noxious weeds? The answer was yes. We work with city, county, state, and federal agencies to alert them of noxious weeds found by the field inspectors. And then the answer to another question, this comes up often, probably every year, it comes up about Scotch broom. The noxious weed is a Class B non-designate in Pierce County, which means control is recommended but not required. If the Weed Control Board were to focus more on Scotch broom, the 40-plus noxious weeds on our list could grow out of control and become the next Scotch broom. We do our utmost best to educate and encourage landowners to control, for example, prevent seed production, and we have Scotch broom removal tools available to assist Pierce County citizens in controlling Scotch broom on their properties. So it is not on the list of noxious weeds, but of course it is a noxious weed, but they just don't have the resources to chase down all that Scotch broom. That would be quite an endeavor.
We could host some Scotch broom pulling parties.
Yes.
Be at it all day. Thank you, Mr. Boki. Are there questions for Mr. Boki, or we have Donna Peoples in our Zoom room, the administrator of the Noxious Weed Control Board. They are also available. Are there any questions before we open this up for a public hearing? Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Mr. Boki, I just want to clarify, Scotch broom is a noxious weed, but it's not on the list of noxious weeds that we address.
Correct.
And it's Class B, so I assume the ones that we address are Class A?
Yeah, I think Ms. Peoples will be able to answer that. I do want to know one thing before we go on. Electronically, you received the annual report, the 2022 annual report, and I really urge you to look at it. I find it interesting every year when we get it, that where the weeds are, what type of weeds. They actually show you by dots what kind of weeds they're finding in the exact locations where. So you'll realize the extent of the issue that they're having to deal with. But I just throw that in. And it has a list of the weeds they.
Thank you. Donna, would you like to add to that response?
Yes, Councilmember. As far as, yes, there are Class A, and those are an eradicate rather than just, those are just more than bothersome weeds. So the type of weeds like poison hemlock or giant hogweed, which causes actual burns on the skin of people if they get the sap on them and are exposed to sunshine. So while Scotch broom is a nuisance and it is everywhere, we really try to focus on the ones that are really severely toxic, like tansy, which is toxic to livestock and, as you know, very troublesome as well.
Okay, thank you, because I'm sure you all do. I get this question, why aren't we really attacking this issue? And this gives me some good information to share with constituents. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions before we open this up for a public hearing? Don't see any. This is a public hearing on ordinance 2023-72. Anybody in chambers wishing to provide comment? Not seeing any. Mr. Weinsbury, anybody in the Zoom room?
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on proposal number 2023-72, press the raise hand icon on Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. No hands at this time, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there remarks by council members? Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. For those of my colleagues that aren't aware, and it was mentioned by Mr. Boki, you can check out weed wrenches, which are delightful to use. And if you really have a lot of energy and some frustration that you want to get out, check out a weed wrench and go pull some Scotch broom in your neighborhood. And I believe that you can contact the board and they can hook you up with one of those. And just saying, it's rather cathartic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Not seeing any. Ms. Peoples, thank you to you and the small but mighty team at the Noxious Weed Control Board for helping especially private property owners manage noxious weeds on their properties so that their land can remain in good productive use and not get run over by noxious weeds. Really helpful, really hard work. Ms. Persons, will you please call the roll on 2023-72?
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the ordinance is adopted. We're at proposal number 2023-73. Councilmember Morrell for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for consideration proposal number 2023-73.
Second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title into the record?
Proposal number 2023-73, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council authorizing the executive to enter into a long-term aircraft hangar and office space lease with Vertical Development LLC on a portion of Pierce County Airport, Thun Field.
Thank you. Councilmember Morrell, you've been intimately involved in this. Can we ask you to begin the introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in favor of this ordinance. It's unique. We don't hear too many of these at the council level, but this is a long-term aircraft hangar lease and office space that we are leasing to Vertical Development LLC at the Thunfield Airport. And we have Mr. Tibbetts in the room, who is part of vertical development and Ziva Aero. This has been an interesting goal of mine, is to get emerging technologies to locate to our airports. And I would really like to have as many of these as we can cluster together. And so with that, I know that Mr. Taylor has probably an introduction for this, but I would like to walk through a slide deck here explaining exactly what we're voting for and the impact it's going to have on the industry and Pierce County. So, Mr. Weinsberry.
They're electric. This particular, and I'm going to walk you through multiple slides here, but what you just saw was Eviation's electric aircraft. It is a 9-passenger jet. My attention to this was because Eviation brought this to the Paris Air Show 4 years ago, and it was just a prototype. And this aircraft is named Alice, and that was the first electric manned aircraft flight. And they operate out of Arlington Airport, and Magna X, which is the motor provider, works out of Snohomish, out of the Cascade cluster over there. So they're located here in Washington, and what they're attempting to do is look at regional approach to these aircrafts, basically 500 miles and less, and they would utilize a lot of the general aviation airports that we have across the United States that would solve a lot of our challenges with international airports. So this is kind of just a diagram on how these hops could happen on 500 miles and less using electric hybrid aircraft. And what you saw was the plane version of the electric aircraft. There is multiple versions out there. Some are basically look like a modified helicopter, and others, like Alice, is a fixed wing, and then you will see with some of them that they're tilt rotor aircraft that basically can vertically take off and land and then fly using standard wing systems. And it's been explained
as far as handling urban air mobility, that these are going to be the Ubers of the sky and be able to take off from our general aviation airports as hubs and move into our urban areas and land similar to a helicopter. And this is Boeing's Whisk aircraft. This one took flight in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is the largest air show in the United States. It's the first one to ever have a manned demonstration at an air show. And there again, it is a tilt rotor plane that takes off horizontally and flies forward. So that is the industry that we're taking a look at. I have watched this industry grow to just an idea, concept, prototyped. You currently have probably more than a half a dozen manufacturers that are moving through. A lot of them have teamed with commercial airliner companies. Boeing definitely is invested in it, and so is all the European aircraft manufacturers. And we have included in our budget the ability to locate eVTOL charging stations at our airports, which is a good thing. We need to have the infrastructure available to bring these eVTOL or electric hybrid manufacturers to our airports. So they're basically saying this is the first major change in aviation in 50 years since the jet engine came onto the scene, is to be able to use these electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles to actually impact the way we move around our region. This is Tilt Rotor. This is Joby, which is one of the premier manufacturers. And then the rotors tilt forward, and now you're flying it just like any other aircraft. thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present what the future is going to look like in Pierce County. So with that, I would also like to ask, Mr. Chair, ask permission of the body to view a presentation that Ziva Air has put together, and that Stephen Tibbetts, who is here representing Vertical Development and Ziva Air, to give a short presentation on Ziva Air.
Thank you, Councilmember Morel. Is there any objection for us hearing from our lessee considered in this lease agreement? Is there any objection to hearing from our lessee? Mr. Tibbetts, thank you for being with us. We invite you to the podium, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity, Pierce County Council. Yeah, so Vertical Development is a real estate arm of Ziva Aero, and I think you might have a packet. Did you get a packet? So yeah,
It's in our digital packet.
in your digital
yes.
packet. Great. So it's got my contact information there, both phone and email. Want to reach out? Usually, I have a little bit more time to talk, so I'm going to have to rush through this a little bit. So Ziva was, we designs and builds electric and hybrid vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and we have about a year and a half ago, we pivoted to this product. However, we recently are working on an order for our Z2. So if you can go to the next slide, Ziva was founded in 2017 to go after a X Prize called GoFly, and was sponsored by Boeing, had $1 million. Unfortunately, what happened is they set the bar a little too high. Nobody's been able to win it. So the competition's still out there. But we decided it was time for us to pursue commercial interests rather than this competition. It's not just me. It's just, it's not a guy with a propeller on his head. We've got about 25 people on the team that have put together a blended wing body vertical takeoff and landing eVTOL. eVTOL stands for electric vertical takeoff and landing. So that's kind of our credentials or calling card. Next slide. Why am I doing this? Well, it's a long story. I'll have to go over into that at some other time with you. I'd be happy to do that. But, the analysts are really starting to wake up. As Dave Morel mentioned, it's going to change everything, especially in areas like, Northwest Washington, Southeast Alaska, Norway, Indonesia, where we're locked by water, right? So can you imagine just jumping in your eVTOL and going to swim, taking 20 minutes or whatever, or less, right? So it's going to change real estate. It's going to change a lot of stuff. But the analysts have picked up on it. They're saying that 300,000 personal air vehicles by 2050. So there's a lot of companies like Joby, Vertical, Beta, that have 5-seat machines. Their target is urban air mobility. That's not what we're doing. We're doing more of a bush plane, more of a vehicle that's more useful in areas where there is no infrastructure. So we're not trying to fly in the city. We're trying to fly outside the city. But it represents an enormous market, and if you can flip to the next slide, you kind of get that graphically. 52% compound annual growth rate between now and 2030 to a $23 billion market. And some estimates go so far as to say a $1 trillion market by 2050. So it's happening. It's real. There's probably 500 companies out there developing different things. So if you go to the next slide, we actually have we were one of the earliest companies to test fly a full-scale eVTOL prototype. What you're seeing there was flown in a nondescript location out in South Pierce County. And if you go on our website, hit our YouTube channel, you can see that we've actually flown it. like I mentioned in the beginning, we have two models. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, we have the Z2, which is based on the Zero. There's growing interest in this, even though we didn't think the world was quite ready for a flying saucer. The way it works is it's called tail sitter. It sits on its tail, takes off, and then transitions to forward flight. The disc itself is a wing, so it creates lift once you get going about 140 miles an hour. And then, so we actually are we prepared a quote for that machine, believe it or not. It surprised me. Anyway, so we started working on the Argon, go to the next slide, which is, we looked at this really hard because our initial market is, like I mentioned, bush pilot and emergency services. Well, the emergency services guys wanted a larger payload. They didn't want the payload in the Z2. So we figured out how to give them that, and this is what we came up with. And so we're working with a standard airframe manufacturer and adding the vertical lift component to it. So the advantage is that initially it'll be hybrid, so it'll have a longer range, higher useful load, and be generally useful for a lot of applications too. Having a piston engine up front, even if it's running something like sustainable aviation fuels, gives you the advantages that you can have a cabin heater, right? Try to do a cabin heater on battery and you're not going to stay in the air very long. So a lot of advantages. Next slide. Yeah, vertical flight is inherently useful. Emergency services, search and rescue. We've been to the Dubai Air Show. A guy from Indonesia came up to us and said, you know, we need this. You can imagine trying to put a freeway to connect those islands. They have 18,000 islands in Indonesia. And there's a lot of places around the world that have topographies like that. So generally useful technology. Ultimately, when the batteries get good enough, they'll be 100% electric, probably charged up by solar-powered hangars, right? So hangars with solar on the roof. So what are we proposing today, or what are we talking about? I think we're just trying to stick a toe in the water. I'm a longtime Pierce County resident. Both sides of my family had homesteads in Pierce County. Sticking a toe in the water, meaning we look at this lease that you guys are going to vote on as just a starter. How do we get started? And we're honored to potentially have our headquarters out there at Pierce County Airport. We're already working with Teen Flight. I don't know if you guys are aware of that program. It's phenomenal. They teach high schoolers how to build and fly airplanes. So I've been volunteering with them. We're also, beginning to coordinate with Clover Park Tech on their electric aviation program. So thanks for your support. I think the future is very exciting. I have this mantra like, walk, fly, walk. What I want to be able to do is walk to my aircraft, fly to where I want to go, and then walk to my destination. No cars, no highways, no road rage, just peace.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts. Thank you for being with us and your interest in being a lessee and doing business in Pierce County. Before I ask Mr. Taylor what he has to present on behalf of our staff, does anybody have any questions of Mr. Tibbetts? I don't see any. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, what do you have to add to all that?
All right, thank you. So as a reminder, the council has for several years supported efforts to facilitate next generation aviation at the county's airports. Examples of that, I think, were just mentioned by Mr. Tibbetts. One example is the support that you've provided to Clover Park Technical College's next generation aviation program, helping to get that program started. Additional support provided to Teen Flight for an electric propulsion laboratory. The lease before you today is in alignment with those efforts. What I'll note is that Vertical Development LLC, it's a Washington limited liability company. As was indicated in the presentation a moment ago, they wish to lease property at Pierce County's airport at Thun Field. Pursuant to county code, any lease that has a period in excess of 25 years, including rights of renewal, has to come before the council for approval by ordinance. The proposed lease that's before you today does have a term of more than 25 years when you consider the rights of renewal that are included within the proposed lease. So that's why it's before you today. The lease before you has an initial term of 20 years. It has 2 renewal options of 5 years each. The lease is for approximately 21,920 square feet of land and a building at the Thunfield Airport. That area is described further in Exhibit A. For reference, that 21,000 square feet is a half acre of property. The proposed lease does have an initial monthly rent of $910.42. That's monthly. Also includes provisions that the leasee would pay the leasehold excise tax that would apply to the lease. The lease agreement does have provisions for annual rent adjustments. These adjustments would be based upon the Consumer Price Index for Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue. The estimated revenue generated for the lease in the first 5 years is $57,000. One other aspect of this lease that I wish to point out is that the proposed lease requires that the tenant build or cause to be built an aircraft hangar of approximately 2,500 square feet or larger in the lease area within a specified time period. The entirety of the lease agreement is set forth in Exhibit B to the proposal. That agreement also includes an aerial photo that illustrates the area that would be leased. That can be found at page 113 of your packet. Lastly, I'll note that this proposal did receive a do-pass recommendation from your Rules and Operations Committee at its December 4th meeting. It's before the council today for final action. We do have Trevor Treaty, the Airport and Ferry Administrator in our Planning and Public Works Department, available today to help answer any questions that you may have regarding this lease. He is in the Zoom lobby. And with that, I'd stand by to answer any questions you may have for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thridi, do you have anything to add on behalf of the department?
Thank you. Trevor Treaty. I'm the Airport and Ferry Administrator with Pierce County Planning and Public Works. I think Mr. Taylor, Mr. Tibbetts, and Councilmember Morrell did a fantastic job of describing both the technicals of the lease and the spirit and intent behind this agreement. I have nothing else to add, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate you making yourself available. Questions or comments by council members before we open this up for a public hearing? Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Morello, for all your work. This is really exciting. Your product is really interesting, Mr. Tibbetts. And Mr. Treaty, I just had a question about the rent. Is this rent consistent with the new rental guidelines that we just passed a week or a couple weeks ago in terms of hangar space, or how is this calculated? Is this a standard rental rate for us?
This is a standard rental rate with a slight discount. That slight discount comes both based on the condition of the building and some of the terms, including that this agreement is what is known as a triple net lease, which puts the general maintenance and upkeep of the building and property, on the responsibility for that on the tenant instead of on the county. So there is some cost savings realized there for the county and therefore passed on to the tenant. The rates that you see here, the per square foot rate that was calculated, is in line with the most recent airport valuation, and is in line with and verified by the FAA's Seattle District Office. I took the longest way around to say, yes, we are in compliance with the county's current leasing standards and with our federal oversight at the FAA.
Well, that's a very thorough answer, and that those conditions make sense given the challenge we have with resources to maintain and uphold, although you guys do a great job, but there's only so much you can do. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you.
Other questions or comments before we open this up for a public hearing? I don't see any. This is a public hearing on Ordinance 2023-73. Anybody in the chambers wish to provide comment? Not seeing any. Mr. Weinsberry, anybody in the Zoom room?
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on proposal number 2023-73, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And at this time, I see no hands, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by council members? Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to possibly close on this particular issue. I think when you look at the future of aviation, this is the direction it's going to go. Decarbonizing our airports is a smart way of doing it, and these electric hybrid aircraft are going to be the future as far as mobility goes. Also, I did want to comment that you saw in the presentation that a lot of these flights happened out of Moses Lake, Grant County Airport. Last week was the first flying car that was launched, called the Switchblade. And if you want to go online and look at that, that's another version of what's coming down the pike. They still need general aviation airports to launch their cars from, but it is a unique model out there. Mr. Tibbetts, we saw his particular version of it, and what Caltran, which is California Transportation, and Oregon Department of Transportation have invested millions now into eVTOL first responder units, that they can respond to rural areas quicker than you can going down a road in an ambulance. So it's the unique applications of these particular models out there are just amazing. And it's all based on someone's technology idea of electrification, which has obviously been advanced by Tesla. And Tesla actually has one. They haven't showed it yet, but they have one. And, you know, the FAA schedule for type is going to happen 24 and 25. Once that happens, you know, it's going to be a realization of this technology. And I appreciate Mr. Tibbetts, because this hasn't been an easy process to get where we're at. I appreciate Mr. Treddy, Director Treaty, for working with us to make this happen. I know you're a short timer, but I really appreciate the work that your department put in this, the executive department, and of course our staff. Mr. Taylor has believed in me and this concept for 4 years now, and it's nice to see it finally come together. So thank you, and I hope you all support this lease agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Morrell. We hate to tell you, but he's paid to believe in you. He'd support you, whether he believed in you or not. I'm partly kidding. He knows it's a good idea, and he's happy to support you. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you. Mr. Morrell, I believe in you, or at least your ideas. No, thank you for your work and everyone's work and leadership on this. When you missed a great pun there, because in 2024, when it all comes down, then the sky's the limit, because this is going to be in massive production all across the United States. You know, we are being a community with a lot of roots in aviation, have a competitive advantage to move way ahead of many of the other communities and to lead in it. But if you just see the advancements we have in electric vehicles, and a lot of people don't know this, but Pacific Northwest is a large R&D for electric vehicles also, through some of our closed circuit tracks up here. So it's really been, because a lot of this, they're mechanical, but they're technology advancements. And when I talk about electric vehicles, which I've had one now almost 11 years, when I got that, it was like an old brick cell phone. And then you look at what they have now, they're like iPhone 3. You know, they're progressing each year by leaps and bounds. And so Interesting, I haven't seen the video of the intentionally flying vehicle. I would say there's probably been some Teslas that have managed to get airborne on their own, but not for very long, except for the one headed to Mars. But they do things a little differently over there at Tesla. Glad to see the Pacific Northwest having electrical transportation engagement. Again, I'll say it, we're uniquely situated as a county with our own in a ferry system to be leaders in electrical transportation in land, sea, and air. And happy to support this. Mr. Treaty, thank you very much for all your service and wisdom and all that you've been. I understand that this will be the last time you'll join us as for our last meeting of the year, but your advice and knowledge and work is greatly appreciated, and I'm sure I have a colleague that would also add to that before we let you go this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to express my support on this. My crystal ball on picking, futuristic scientific things is kind of a zero. When a computer company came out in the 80s, I'm like, really? I said, how are you going to push electronics through the air? So here we are today, and when I had the issue with the airport in my district, one of my constituents sent me this picture from Dubai with these kinds of aircraft, and so I could see it as definitely something of the future. And I guess in America we can be, well, it's probably worldwide, if we can't use the roads, we're going to find something else. So I applaud the ingenuity going on in this in the research, and thank you, Councilmember Morrell, for bringing this forth and all the work into it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your leadership on this and providing the visual aid so we really understand what you're talking about until you actually watch the video. It's kind of hard to understand. It's closer and closer to the Jetsons, everybody. That's what I kept thinking the whole time. Mr. Treaty, thank you very much. I'm not going to say the word because then I will get a phone call, so you know what we're talking about as far as a certain floating device that's down near Steilacoom and Anderson Island, but thank you for your years of service and for helping me navigate the system, pun intended there. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Herrera.
Just got to weigh in here. I'm sure that 100 years ago, well, maybe actually more than 100 years ago, when cars were starting to come around, stuff like that, the guy who was a wagon wheel mechanic was worrying about his future and things like that. But, we're looking at the future, like people were looking at aviation 100 years ago, how they could not even fathom how that's going to happen. And this is going to be one of those jerk moments in human history, how it's going to catapult us forward to new heights. So just wanted to weigh in on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Tibbetts, thank you for continuing to want to do business in Pierce County, allowing us to be your not only your landlord, but your partner in this work, and helping you and your team have a place to hopefully grow your business for a very long time. So thank you for investing. We've closed the public hearing, and we'll be done with. Thank you so much for being with us. We really do appreciate it. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on 2023-73?
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the ordinance is adopted. That brings us to Section 9, resolutions. We have Resolution 2023-165S before us. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move, page behind us, proposal number R 2023-165S.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2023-165S. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number R 2023-165S, a resolution of the Pierce County Council adopting the Pierce County, Washington State legislative priorities for 2024.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor to introduce.
Yes, thank you. So this proposal begins at page 126 of your packet. As the title indicates, the proposal adopts Pierce County's legislative priorities for the 2024 Washington State legislative session. It requests the county executive and the government relations contractor to take action to support the adopted priorities and to regularly report on activity during the legislative session. The council adopts the legislative priorities annually. These priorities guide efforts during the state legislative session. As I indicated, they do provide direction to the government relations contractor and the county executive on how to pursue and respond to proposed legislation during the session. During the session, the council receives a weekly report on activity related to these priorities and then provides guidance as needed to the contractor and county staff through the session. The proposal before you identifies 6 legislative priority areas. These priority areas include public safety, public health, human services, that's all one category. Also includes housing and homelessness, economic development and partnerships, environmental stewardship, infrastructure, as well as a 6th category titled long-term funding capacity and stability of counties. The highest priorities for the county are listed at the top of the priorities document. These top 4 priorities include civil conversion and maintaining opportunities to admit patients to state hospitals, supporting and defending funding for the Gateway Project, State Route 167, supporting distribution of Climate Commitment Act funding to local governments for energy efficient upgrades to public buildings and other allowable uses. And then the 4th priority, supporting legislative efforts to reduce county costs and ensure counties have the financial capacity and stability to provide mandated programs and services. Those are your highest 4 priorities listed in this document. I'll note that the Exhibit A to the resolution contains priority statements for each of the priority areas along with requested actions. There's approximately 30 actions identified within the document before you. The proposal before you did receive a due pass recommendation from your Rules and Operations Committee at its December 4th meeting. It's before the council today for final action, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Are there questions before we open this up for a public hearing? I don't see any. This is a public hearing on Pierce County Council's and Pierce County's Washington State legislative priorities for 2024. Anyone in chambers wishing to provide comment? We'll start here in chambers. Anyone wishing to provide comment? I'm not seeing any. Anybody in the Zoom room wishing to provide comment on our 2024 state legislative priorities? Mr. Weinsbury.
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on proposal number R 2023-165S, press the raise hand icon on Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And at this time, we have no hands, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. Are there final remarks by council members? Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the proposal before us and the priorities that the council has put forward. Like all documents, I may not agree with everything, but there's enough in there that I can agree with. So I will be supporting it and lobbying for those priorities that it affects my district and the Pierce County as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Morrell. Thanks for your work on this. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank the council and the staff, too, for all their time in putting this together, because there's a lot in here. And, as I look through it, I understand it's our role to provide the framework for our county policies. And the priorities that we have listed are very laudable, and who wouldn't want them? I mean, we all want the American dream, the affordable home, clean streets and jobs. But my concerns are with the solutions that are being proposed or will be proposed in working on these goals. And like right now, I don't feel safe, and I don't think there's enough in here to address that issue. I had a friend I just learned about 3 nights ago was shot at 6 or 8 times on 167 in the Milton area, and that person is still on the loose. And I'm learning about federal maneuvers that, if they are passed, that they would forever change how we access our ecosystem services. And I'm concerned that there's more focus on services that empower groups and build dependence upon government, thereby growing government beyond our ability to pay for it. And I just see that our property rights are being decided for us through these goals. And while I understand it's not possible to write goals, that will satisfy everyone, I'm not seeing enough in economic development, like in the airport. And I'm just, at this point, I'm not able to support, the way that these are written and defined. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Krueger. Councilmember Denson.
Chair Mello and staff for really listening to all of the council members. I'm looking through this, and I've looked through it, over the last week or so, and really excited to see some specific things that I had suggested and that are important to my district, as well as I think the county as a whole, and some really targeted efforts that I think really show that we're advocating for Pierce County and making sure that Pierce County has a strong voice, and we're making sure that the state is enabling the county council to be able to do its job and be effective in addressing all sorts of things, from public safety to the environment to economic development. So this being my first time on county council, working with our legislative staff, at least this early on, with like the individual points, Mr. Taylor, will our legislative liaisons be looking for bills that fit within these categories? I assume so. And if those specific efforts are not discovered, if bills don't exist, will that legislative liaison also be trying to identify sponsors and help us design some legislation around some of these issues?
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. So, yes, Councilmember, you're correct. Our government affairs contractor will be reviewing legislation that's introduced during the session to see how it aligns with priorities of the county, and we'll report out on that as appropriate. The end of session report that's provided also sort of a report card as to how successful we are with these priorities. In certain cases, the county may offer up, with sponsorship from an appropriate member of the legislature, bill proposals. For instance, I know that Mr. Shaw is working on a bill proposal related to the ferry, which is one of the priorities on here. Mr. Shaw will also utilize this document as a guide for indicating county support or opposition to bills, or neutrality for bills during the session, during the opportunity for public comment. One other thing to note about the next session, it's a short session. Mr. Shaw has spoken to that at prior briefings of the council. One other purpose of this document is to provide information and set the stage for 2025 longer sessions where there may be opportunity to have more influence as a county on legislation. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So it's not just about 2024, it's about, future years as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Denson. Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. I want to comment a little bit about this. Like Councilmember Morrell, there's some things in here that I agree with. There was a process with the whole county in getting a collective to put our input in to get this document out. And there's some things in here that, it was not in my cup of tea, but there are things in here that I agree with. And I'll be concentrating on those as we move forward, so I will be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Herrera. Any other final remarks? Well, we do have a short session that starts shortly after the new year, and we have a lot of work to do to continue to educate our delegation. We had our delegation in at the end of October to begin really laying the groundwork, but, especially the items we call out at the very top, civil conversion commitments. We have about 15% of the people who are currently residing in the Pierce County Jail really should not be there. They are civil. They really deserve to be civilly committed and restored. Their mental competency. Being in the jail is not the right place for them to be restored. So we have it's a big issue for Pierce County. It's a costly issue. It's a humane issue. That's why we call it out to the top. The Highway 167, State Route 167, 509, another top tier issue that we've identified. That the project, like every other major transportation project, is coming in over engineer's estimate and cost escalation, and we have to protect that investment and progress we've made. That's why it's at the top of the list. The legislature will be making significant decisions about how to spend the Climate Commitment Act dollars, billions of dollars that have already been collected. And we can either give them projects to help us save money and clean our air or not, and let other communities get access to those investments. I'm glad we're raising our hand and saying, hey, we have great ideas for great projects to make our public buildings cleaner and easier to and cheaper to maintain. And finally, we have a long-term discussion we need to have with the legislature. We knew about funding stability. We learned and continue to be reminded during our last budget process that as early as 2027, we start going below our reserve levels, that healthy reserve levels. We cannot keep up with the cost of delivering core public services without more stable funding to deliver core public services like public safety. So that's why those four are called out. These are real opportunities that I know we can make progress on, especially in the short session. There are other items that many members, myself included, will be advocating for, but wanted to underline the four major significant issues that are really cross-cutting, and I think there are real opportunities to make significant progress, especially this next session. There are other items as well. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I didn't get in before you made your comments, but excellent comments there. And I was reviewing it here, and like many others, there's stuff in here that I support, stuff that I don't. But you know, I wouldn't want to. We have some very important things here, like the Milroy Bridge replacement in 167, and some really great programs that we're looking at supporting. And I don't want to be on record that I don't support these. And so I think that we need to make sure that we are moving forward an agenda that both sets the stage for what we want to see Olympia working on, but also leaves us in a flexible enough position to opinion on other items that come up in Olympia with guidance. So I appreciate the work that is here, and I look forward to more work as the session gets kicked off. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on Resolution 2023-165S?
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Nay.
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchen.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 6 ayes and 1 nay.
On a vote of 6 ayes and 1 nay, the resolution is adopted. We are at Section 10, Community Forum. Community Forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on any topic that is of significance to or affecting Pierce County government and that did not appear on today's agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit. We ask you to state your name if you would like it on the record and to address all comments to the chair. And we'll remind you your comments must be germane to issues that are of significance to or affecting Pierce County government. We'll start with those here in chambers. Anybody in chambers wishing to provide comment? Mr. John O'Laughlin, please come to the podium. I'll ask you to state your own name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to make your remarks. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Mello, members of the Pierce County Council. My name is John O'Laughlin. In the far northwest of the county, there is a creek that has excellent water quality and provides great habitat for salmon species that, as we all know, are under threat. This is Rocky Creek. The land around the creek is largely undeveloped and provides a healthy watershed for the area. The surface water management section of the county purchased 5 parcels along this creek totaling over 37 acres to preserve these valuable environmental resources. I applaud the investment of public money and the leadership and stewardship that it demonstrates. In fact, it was the county's commitment to this segment of the creek that was a major factor in leading me to purchase 3 parcels totaling just under 10 acres for my family and myself 3 years ago. The reason I'm here this afternoon is to ask the county to honor those public dollars and their commitment to the environmental resources and to show the leadership necessary to preserve salmon for future generations. Here's the issue. There's an access road that serves 17 parcels, which have 10 separate owners. This includes the 3 that I own and the 5 which are owned by the county. The county is the major property owner along this private easement, as measured by the number of parcels and the total acreage. In January of 2022, there was a major landslide along this easement. Since that time, I've been in contact with county staff from the Property Management Group, the Surface Water Management Group, and the Roads Group. And I must say staff have been professional. However, I believe that no one person in the myriad of contacts I've made has had the authority to step up and do the right thing. And that's why I'm here with policymakers today. I think the right thing is for each property owner to pay their fair share, but the county has the expertise to provide leadership to correct this imminent threat. Of all the property owners, who is the most capable to lead the effort to draft a road maintenance agreements to protect the creek and move the process forward? More importantly, I think the county must recognize the integral connection between the land they've purchased for preservation and the importance of properly constructed and maintained roads to a healthy watershed. Witness the millions of dollars the county has had to spend to correct roads that weren't developed with protection of fish species in mind. The county's made a great decision in purchasing these lands. It's only prudent to protect that investment now. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Anyone else in chambers wishing to provide input during community forum? Seeing no one else in council chambers, Mr. Weinsbury, anybody in the Zoom room?
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And at this time, we have 2 hands, Chair. First name, Erica. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Erica Snell. Thank you, Chair and Council. I just wanted to make a public comment in regards to Mr. Mello's concerns about the budget being depleted for community services. And I am hopeful that with what I've demonstrated with child care desert zones that are heavily populated in Pierce County, or I should say unpopulated, to be clear, that if we look at the Growth Management Act, the GMA, under community facilities, and add a definition in code to allow child care in our zoning areas, will bring a huge population of families, because we'll have the community services they need to flourish, and that could be just what it takes to help offset that budget with the tax revenue that'll come in from that population growth. People move to communities because of community services, whether it's close to their job, health care, child care, education. And if we want to target an audience based on community services, and we have to change the child care desert zone. I'm aware that we have some things coming up in 2024 at a jurisdiction level, and I do appreciate you taking all my public comment and testimony in regards to this. But I also think that this needs to be approached at a state level. And I believe that with Pierce County's help, you can get a huge recognition, follow by example, and be leaders on this proposal to help people in the community. Thank you for everything. Happy holidays. That's all I have.
Thank you for being with us.
All right, next we have David. Please state your name for the record.
Mr. Hurd, Terry Hurd, that believe this is you.
The mic is unmuted.
Terry, we can't hear you if you are, we see that you are unmuted, but we can't hear you here in council chambers if you are trying to speak.
Well,
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
wonderful. Canyon Road, I've spoke to you several times on it, has a number of cross sections and people trying to move from Canyon Road onto other roads in several areas. There are no lights. That's wonderful. There's a lot of space between the number of lights that are on Canyon Road. I wish to speak specifically to the Military Road and Canyon Road. That intersection has lights that we will sit going north and south that are turning left and have to wait for several lights of the other intersecting roads from Brookdale Road and those south. There's a lot of times that if that light was flashing yellow, traffic would move, and we should all try to move traffic rather than sit there and waste gasoline. Please consider turning that particular light on Canyon Road to a flashing yellow. It would improve our attitudes at least. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, we have no other hands, Chair.
Seeing no hands, we'll close the public community forum portion of our meeting and bring it back to the council. Thank you to all of you who took time to provide your thoughts and concerns. And Mr. O'Loughlin, in particular, just wanted to let you know we hear you about your requests about Rocky Creek properties. Councilmember Denson represents the area. I'm certain she's going to be in contact with you and seeing how we might be able to facilitate some progress on the easement work with you. So thank you again for bringing that to our attention. We are at section 11, other business and announcements. Excuse me, we are at other business before we get to announcements. Vice Chair Campbell, we moved proposal 2023-168 here to other business. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I move proposal number R 2023-168.
To be scheduled.
Oh, sorry. Just moving it. I move proposal number R 2023-168 to be scheduled. I didn't know that.
I can assist.
Sorry about that. For it, Ms. Long, can you? Sorry, could you
No, that's
phrase
okay.
the
Yeah,
proper motion?
because this is not something you ordinarily do, so this is a little different. It's moved from a certain portion of the consent agenda. So your motion today would be to introduce proposal R 2023-168 and schedule the final council hearing for January 2nd. Now, if you recall, you don't want to do this. It's just phrased in the positive because the subsequent resolution on your consent agenda, R 2023-169, incorporates the same action, so it's redundant and unnecessary. So
it's confusing.
A no vote,
but
right? A no vote would basically dispose of 168, which is what you ultimately want.
So again, we're going to ask Vice Chair Campbell to make the motion so that we can dispose of the item. Vice Chair Campbell.
Maybe I'll get a second this time. I move proposal number R 2023-168 to be scheduled for the meeting of January 2nd.
It's been properly moved and seconded to schedule resolution 2023-168 for the meeting of January 2nd, 2024. Vice Chair Campbell and I are asking you to vote no on this so that we don't schedule it because we've already embedded this action in another action we took to make boards and commission items. I know it's a little wonky, but we do not want to schedule this.
Correct.
All those in favor of scheduling the resolution 168 to the meeting of January 2nd, please say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The motion is not adopted. Is there any other business by members? Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you. I'm just sad that our last item of the year failed. In all seriousness, thank you. Just want to, I know this is our last meeting of the year. We'll probably touch on that shortly. But want to remind everyone earlier, we were told of the Pierce County Homeless Memorial on December 21st at 5 p.m. For those who can make it. I also want to wish everyone a joyous New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and today's the 6th day of Hanukkah for those who celebrate, and I want to wish greetings for that too. Thank you everyone who may still be tuned in and watching for tuning in and watching. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Other business and announcements by other members. Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Last week we had the proclamation for Wreaths Across America, but I just want to remind everyone again, December 16th, this Saturday at the Ording Cemetery, we're going to have the Wreaths Across America ceremony and then wreath laying down there. Little logistics to it is there is no parking at the cemetery. You have to park at the Ording Soldiers Home, and there will be a shuttle service to the cemetery from 7:30 to 8:50. The ceremony starts at 9 p.m. and bring appropriate clothing. And and that's one of many that's happening across the county. I don't know the specifics on all of them, if someone wants to touch on those.
The time again on the one that you were reminding us of?
The ceremony starts at 9 p.m. The shuttle service is from 7, did I say p.m.?
Yeah.
9 a.m. And the shuttle service is 7:30 to 8:50 a.m. That's what I get for not doing military time.
We're creatures of habit, aren't we?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Herrera, for mentioning that. I will jump in since there are ceremonies at Cromwell and Arndale. I will be at Cromwell on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. And then that evening is the Gig Harbor related car parade. Santa's showing up. I think the Grinch and Frosty, if anybody would like to come out, you can walk along downtown, uptown. It's a lot of fun. There's also a Santa's Village there with shopping and food and all of that good stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair, and I hope we have much better weather this weekend than what I had Saturday in Eatonville at the Christmas parade. But in Spanaway at noon on Saturday at the Fur Lane Cemetery, there will be a Wreaths Across America. I will be at that, and I will be also in Ording. That's always a special one. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other business or announcements? Well, I too want to wish our community and our staff a very restful and joyous holiday season. Thank you for a very productive year. This is our last meeting of the year, at least regular business meeting. The Select Committee on Homelessness does meet tomorrow, and that's the last council committee meeting of the year. Want the public to know that our meetings for the week of December 18th and December 25th for both those weeks are canceled, and will resume regular business. The council will resume regular business on Tuesday, January the 2nd, in the new year 2024. So wish everyone a peaceful and joyful holiday season. Ms. Long, is there any other business for council this evening?
There is not. Thank you.
Seeing no other business before the Pierce County Council, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
It has a big impact throughout our plan.